Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching YouTube and you see a little button or a little link down below, you can click on that. It'll take you to Zoom. You'll see another little link, and then you click on that, and it'll take you to Makana, and that's where you can actually ask questions and chat with everybody else. This is the best time to ask questions, is right at the very beginning. And if you're not asking questions, you should vote on those questions because you drive the show. The audience are the producers. They're the ones that are pushing what we talk about every single day. We don't have a format. We don't have a plan, at least for the first hour. Second hour, we do have a plan, and today we're going to have our own band, the Remotes. They produced a song and a video, and we're going to watch that in the after the second hour. If you think that you could actually answer the questions, you can see we have this big panel here, probably I think we're nearing a millennia of experience today between everyone of all kinds of areas of media and virtual production. And so this is a great day to ask questions. I think we have a pretty good chance of fielding them well. So, but if you think you can be part of this, be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we need to do a mic check with you. If you're not sure if you're going to pass the mic check, if you're not sure about your camera, we open at 6, so you've got a little open time between 6 and 6:40. There's no promises about the content. We're just chit chatting and then working on people's technical problems. So, so that's kind of what you have from 6 to 6:40. Again, 7 to 8 general questions. 8 to 9 is the more vertical, whatever we want to talk about there. A reminder that tomorrow we start, we have a couple things. Of course, we're talking about education. Then we're doing our last training on Zoom OSC, which has been amazing with Andy Carluccio. And then the next hour, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we are doing our Resolve training. Right now, what there is to do is for you to go get that. It's coming. Every email that you get every morning has the link to where to go to get Resolve and to download it and or to buy it at half off or whatever, and then watch it. You don't have to buy it, by the way. You can come to the class without buying anything and just watch. So, but we do recommend supporting our trainers, Steve and Mark, by picking up their training so that they this is a good situation for them. So they're going to be hanging out answering questions. They are not going to be demoing. This is not a class. So you need to watch the videos. We're just talking about the first class is all we're talking about right now. And so that's where you want to kind of focus your energy of watching it and having them answer your questions. It's going to be really great. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Our first one today comes from Orion Z. Slater of London. Any cheap, and it says RECC rec. I'm not sure I understand that very
recommendation.
Well. Pardon me?
Recommendation.
Okay. Any cheap recommendation to boost my microphone volume? It works perfectly on my Windows desktop, but it's so quiet on MacBook. I need to boost it by about 3 times. Audio Hijack is out of my budget.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I've been chatting with him on Discord and trying to figure out, because he's got a mic and a USB interface, which works fine in Windows and not in Mac, which to me points to not a hardware problem, but some kind of software problem on the Mac. So I think he should probably dive into that more. If he needs to boost it 3 times, something is wrong. You know, if you're looking to get a 300% boost out of Audio Hijack. And I'll put what his mics are in the chat.
Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I would go into the audio MIDI settings. It's kind of where you get a hold of the lowest level volume controls for Mac. So I would go to the audio MIDI settings and then check that input.
And next question.
Grant Whitehead in Adelaide, Australia, and here on the panel says, Greg, what's the most unrealistic Foley sound you've ever added to a movie, like text displaying on a computer screen?
Unrealistic Foley sounds. Gee, we hardly ever do that. I would say, actually, the odd that you ask, because this just came up the other day in another meeting. Star Trek VI, I think it was. There's a shot where some guys have broken into the spaceship and they're killing off the occupants one by one. And there's all this blood and plasma stuff kind of floating through the cabin, and many people have remarked on that the sound of that floating blood, and it was just basically a really old oil can that we had, and we filled it with 2 different weights of oil. and they kind of and they sounded different inside the can. And then, I had the luxury of this fantastic Lexicon 2400 pitch shifter, and it was a stereo unit. So I pitched down on one side, and I pitched up on the other side, and recorded all three tracks. And then just, of course, there was a lot of latency, so we had to reline them up. But when they got lined up, it sounded fantastic. That it had all those little parts in it. That was probably the weirdest one.
That's awesome. Like you just realize like that's one little scene in a movie.
It sounded exactly like Weightless Blood, didn't it?
It did. One of the challenges that I'm going to try to drag Greg into as we move forward at some point is doing one where we give some people a scene and possibly even some raw recordings, and then say, okay, go ahead, do it. And then Greg, have Greg do it. Like this is what he took those core audio. Because it was a conversation I had with another sound designer at one point that he said you give him 5 sounds and he'll just make all the sounds for all the, for a whole scene, by just stretching them and turning them and moving them and everything else. But it would be fun to do that, do kind of a Foley challenge. I mean, if in another life, if I had another, Foley would have been what I did in movies, because it just seems like the most fun to figure out what something sounds like. So, is it true, Greg, that most bone breaking is celery? Is that true?
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty basic component. There's a lot of stuff. It depends how, I mean, realistically, it's not. To me, it's not sharp enough. It depends on what else is going on too, right. Because if you really want to have a bone break, and like you're going to show a giant compound fracture with the bone sticking out, it's really got to break, and you got to hear it, and it's got to cut through everything else that's going on. So right. You're going to need more than just celery.
That's great. More than just celery. If we had a title for the show, that would be it. More than just celery. All right, next question.
Christian Ortiz in South Florida says, Alex L., you mentioned eye tracking in the past. Have you or anyone done any recent eye tracking with something like Tobii, Tobii? How was it done in the past?
Tobii is what we used. But Tobii's been around for a long time, maybe 20 years. And so it's Tobii. And they've been doing eye tracking, and their tracking just keeps on getting better and better and better. Most of the eye tracking that we did that really formulated a lot of my ideas around production, presentations, and so on and so forth was over 10 years ago. So it's on my list of things that I'm probably going to purchase a tracker or two and start doing it. It's stunning to watch heat maps of people looking at ads, videos, websites, presentations, because it'll track it over video. And so you see these heat maps of like 100 people watching the same thing, and you just see what they don't look at and what they do look at and where they're looking and everything else. And it's pretty amazing and very confronting, because you realize there's so much work you put into stuff that people really aren't looking at, and so, but in ad agencies, they use them all the time because they need to know that you're not looking at the parts of their ad. So that's where the parts that you don't look at, that's where they put all the disclaimers. Anyway. All right, next question.
Moving on to Gabriel Ung, who's in the panel from Malaysia. And he says, could the panel share how they use AWS virtual machines running Zoom into their workflow? The idea is, pun intended, still very remote to me. What are its use cases? What does it manage? And how does it integrate into their local setup?
Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah. As far as how we're using AWS, so typically it's doing something kind of like what Alex does in physical, where you've got multiple machines, multiple systems pulling individual frames for various panelists. So that's a lot of what it is, and they're returning all of that Zoom content into a central location. As far as how you integrate it into the local, we try to do as much as we can where everything comes up to the cloud in that same way. So everybody's effectively a Zoom participant coming into the cloud. That's kind of the basic way that we use it, but there's all sorts of different workflows. Reach out in Discord.
Leland?
one way we've used it in the past is simply as a monitoring tool so that we can get into other breakout rooms and into other avenues within the meeting that we might not be privy to as the local producer for one stage. We have other people watching other stages that are being set inside of a Zoom by using those AWS virtual machines to get in.
Yeah, I was just working on something with Tucker, and it was so great to have in that case there was a green room, and that green room had Tucker had a virtual instance that jumped into that green room and pulled the audio out and put it into Unity. And so as a producer, I'm sitting there and I go, I wonder how the green room's going. I just tap on a little button and listen to it, and then I go, okay, it's fine. And then I went back to what I was doing, and it's wow. That's actually the first time I've had that. We've done a lot of different ways of doing it, and that was the first time I could just pop into the green room with that, and so it's pretty stunning. Yeah. So there's a lot of cool things. What we ought to do, Tucker and Guy and Jeff and some of the other folks, and let's see if we can get a Friday where we do how to, from the ground up, we want to have 3 Zoom rooms going into vMix. Let's just say that's table stakes, and just show from the ground up, this is how we create the instance. This is how we, create the rooms. And I think people just need to see it to figure that out. Go ahead, Tucker.
If we're going to do this, and this actually came up in cloud production in Discord, I think this morning, but if we're going to do that, what I would recommend is, this is going to make AWS crazy. Everybody needs to go create their AWS account, get that started, and just start establishing your account, because one of the most important things whenever you're getting into AWS is you need to make sure that you have an established account, because what will happen is with especially the GPU instances, which is what we lean on a lot, you have to make requests for access to vCPUs in that situation. So you need to say, I need 64 vCPUs, 32 vCPUs, and they're not going to give it to you right away. They'll give you 16, which is enough to play, but not enough to do much. So establish your account, get it going. It makes a huge difference.
Again, on this first one, I think that we'll just watch you guys do it. But yeah, definitely people want to start kind of building that up. Go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I've mentioned to people in the past I was going to do a vMix lab. That is starting in March on Wednesdays every afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a different platform, but on the end of the month, probably the 31st, I'm going to have Jeff out there, want to have Jeff to help with the vMix on the cloud aspects that we're working with. So that'll be a good time to give you a month to plan ahead and let everybody work into the AWS.
Absolutely. What's that date?
It's going to be every Wednesday at 1 p.m. through March that I'm going to be doing a webinar for at least an hour. So we'll go from there.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. Put that in the community events. Make sure everybody knows about it. Chris?
Thank you, Leland. Awesome.
I think one of the most important things to think about when it comes to doing stuff virtually and in the cloud, and it makes perfect sense when you say it out loud, but it's very easy to forget about it. If you have to bring a bunch of, Zoom instances into a building, as opposed to leaving it in the cloud, you're saturating your download pipes. And when you can leave all that data in the cloud and do all the mixing and switching, you're going to have a more robust production pipeline, because you're not pulling it all down to you, doing stuff to it, and then pushing it back up. I think
definitely you need that. Like we do a lot of it. We have 2 1 gig pipes, into our buildings. So we're, but we need that. I mean, you can't do it without a primary backup of a gig to do the kind of stuff we're doing. There are advantages to having it physical. I need to do some color transforms and other things that I can't do in the cloud. And we work at resolutions and other things that would be difficult. So what I look at is where I see us going with what I'm doing anyway, with what we're doing at 090, is this kind of mix and match of it. So there's a whole bunch of physical parts that we need, but I see us opening more and more rooms in the cloud where we're managing things more and more. But the physical part handles the physical things that we need that can't be done in the cloud right now. The cloud lets us scale, and that's that's what we're kind of playing with. But I don't think everybody needs to do what we're doing either. It's just the way we need to do it for what we're doing. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, if you wanted to see real quick, just for play out today, this is what I've got going on. This is just a Windows server running up in the cloud at the most simplest form. That's you guys running on Zoom. So if I minimize that window and I look at vMix now, so this is again just vMix running and Zoom's running on the same machine. And so if I hit play on, well, first I'd need to go back to Zoom and turn on the video for that instance, which is down here. Oop. Come on, Zoom. Oh, it's minimized up there. So if I say start video, you'll see, there's the playout machine there. And now I've got this video that's still in the program side. If I hit play, you guys will see it start to play. So this is just vMix and Zoom. And so I'm using it as a simple player. Now, if I want to get more complicated, I have a bunch of NDI inputs and I could add those. But just, again, I don't want to make it too crazy. Tucker can make it really crazy really fast. But this is basically Zoom and a player. And so that's what we're going to be doing here in just a little bit. And it'll make more sense when you guys actually, well, hopefully this makes a lot of sense. It's just a player up in the cloud, but we're getting crazy bandwidth up here. That's like Chris said, that's the real kicker, is that I can bring in, this whole panel. I could ISO every single one of these guys and then NDI them, and then they would all pop up in here. It's complex to set up, but it's a possibility.
Yep. Go ahead, Tucker, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, Chris Finnock just nailed it on the head as far as you're not just replacing. A lot of people say, okay, I'm just putting my vMix machine in the cloud. You're putting your vMix machine, your insane bandwidth, the network infrastructure. It is all of those things and the level of redundancy. So
great. Thanks, guys. We'll get that Friday soon. I'll just figure out when you guys are available. Next question.
Ian Alford in London says, can you talk us through the ABC steps in your process to shade a Blackmagic camera with an ATEM?
Sure. I'll show you mine because that's what I'm doing right now. So I don't know how to do this. Let me see if I can figure this out, how to do it well. Because it would be kind of useful for you to see both. Well, we'll just do it this way. Anyway, so the first thing I have to do is my camera has to be connected to my ATEM via SDI or HDMI, depending on which camera. I'm using a Blackmagic 6K with an ATEM Mini Pro, but it doesn't. And then the second thing is in the camera, you have to tell it what number you are. So the camera, whatever you plug it into on the input, this is what a lot of people get confused about when they first do it. You plug the camera in to input 2. You have to tell the camera, not the switcher, but the camera, that you are input 2. The reason is that all the camera information is going out to all the cameras, so that when they're all getting all the information that they need all the time, but they just know I'm only listening for camera 2. I'm listening for, so it's the camera's listening for the information being sent back to them to shade it. So once you've done that, now what happens, and I'll just screen share this real quick. So this is what I see, when I open up the cameras area. So here's the switcher, this is the ATEM, here's the cameras. And so now I have this camera here. Now, if I'm only working, what happens when I switch, you'll see me just switch to something else completely, but it actually is going, okay, this is your live camera. So you know whether you're in a live camera or not. One of the things that I can do here is I can autofocus. I do this a lot. So you can hit the autofocus button and it'll refocus the camera. And that is one of the most valuable things. If you have one of the biggest reasons that I say you should buy a Blackmagic camera with a Blackmagic switcher is that little button that I can constantly be changing my focus. Anytime I feel like I'm a little out of focus, because if I lean in, lean out, if you're doing short depth of field, it's really hard to stay in focus. And so you'll see me constantly, if you watch me, you'll see me bounce in and out. Like I'll do it right now. I might get my mic. But if I go like this, see how it changes there. So now I'm out of focus. And I push it again and it brings me back into focus. And so those are things that I can adjust there. That's beyond shading. Now, the key here is this little button. And again, I reset this morning by accident. So I'll turn that back to 60. So I can change the shutter speed. It doesn't really matter for this. Color, and then this is my gain. And then usually I can select these, but the easier thing to do is to click this button here. So if I click this button, it's now going to open up so that I have more control over each one of these. So one of the things I tend to do is I tend to crush my blacks a little bit. So you can see if I turn this way down, you can see it makes it really dark. And so I can grab this little piece here. That's actually my aperture. That's actually changing the aperture in the lens as I move it up and down. So I can open it up here. And then I tend to crush my blacks a little bit And then, but you can also do things like bring your gamma up. You can see my gamma. That's the middle of your curve. If you think of curves in Photoshop, that's like grabbing the middle and moving it up or down. And so there you have that. And then you have, these are the highlights. And sometimes I can crush the highlights a little bit. That's like moving the end of the curve. So what you want to think of is the lift is the bottom corner of a curve on Photoshop. The gain is the top corner, and the gamma is the center point. So that's the easiest way to think about what you're adjusting here. And then of course you have each color. So now I can either adjust the colors mathematically down here, or I can just grab onto this little ball and go, woohoo, now I'm very blue. Now I'm a little bit more green. Now, so I can just move this around. And if you have the little controller, you can do a lot more. But I'll bring it back closer to the center. But I can also grab it and say, oh, I just want a little bit of, I want a little bit more red, or a little less red. And so I can do all of those things, kind of either with each channel or each piece here. Now I can also do saturation, hue, contrast. And so that's what and then you can, if you have a zoom, I don't have a lens that will do this, but if you had a lens that's motorized, you can actually zoom in and out here. And then this is actually focus in and out, or this is focus in and out. And this is just moving up. This is opening up. This is purely the reason that this one's important is this is just the aperture. This, when you grab onto this is lift and aperture. So if I go this way, you'll see that my lift goes up. If I go that way, it crushes my blacks. And it also controls that. It's a little dangerous to use because once you get it set, you can very easily, while you're trying to change aperture, you can get it the wrong, you can actually crush your blacks more by accident. So you can do that here. Anyway, that's the basic shade. And of course you have every camera that's plugged into the switcher will do it. And I have a tendency to noodle with it every day. So I look a little different every day because I'm playing with it. And part of that is so that I can, I'm constantly finding what I like, but also I'm getting better at feeling comfortable with it as a shading unit by not setting and forgetting. I'm constantly noodling with what I like and what it looks like. Go ahead, Alex.
So is that actually really changing the signal information coming in out of the mixer? So it's not changing metadata. So you don't actually have access. Oh, right.
No, it's changing. Well, it's changing how it's being processed from, I believe, the raw footage. It's not doing a transform to the color in the switcher. It's actually doing it, I believe, in the camera, as far as what's coming out there. So it's taking the raw sensor data and then shading it based on what you're asking it to do. So it's not, and the only place that it's mechanical is changing the aperture and changing the zoom. Shutter is kind of mechanical. So those are mechanical things, and the rest of it is how it deals with that raw data before it transforms it into video. And one of the things that I do that's a little different is that because I was having a lot of trouble with highlights and everything else, I just didn't have enough dynamic range. I actually keep my camera in extended video, and then I crush it in the switcher. So the LUT in it is extended video, and then I crush that in the switcher instead of with the switcher shading. And I found that was a lot easier to use. Now, the next thing that I haven't started using on the show yet, because I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, I have figured it out, but I haven't done it to a level that I like it, is taking a live feed from this, going into Resolve Live, and then creating a look, or even just recording it and taking it into Resolve and creating a look that I want and saving that back out as a LUT, so that my goal is to get to a point where the camera looks almost exactly with what I want. And then I put that as a LUT on the camera of that's in this environment exactly the way I want it to look. But then I shade a little bit. I would only use the shading as small adjustments to something based on a need. But what I will say is that you're leaving so much on the table from a control perspective. If you get any other camera other than the Blackmagic cameras, when you can't do that on your switcher, you got this little switcher that now can control the cameras and do those things. And I just think I say that over and over again, but when you have that kind of control, people think, oh, it's only one camera that's just looking at me. But you look at how much control I have over that. Having to get up, as someone who's done this for years, having to get up and adjust the lens for focus and try to figure out where the focus is, where I'm sitting with a short depth of field. And then, I move a little bit and now I'm out of focus and I have to get up again and do it again. It's just the focus part is worth it. Hosmuk?
If you have more than one camera, can you replicate your settings across those cameras?
Yep. You can just cut and paste across the cameras. So within it, haven't done it in a long time, but you can definitely just cut. You can you can cut and paste between cameras. So you just paste them all into the cameras, and that gets you close. Remember that every lens is different than another lens. Even if you buy two 24-70 lenses from Canon, the color will be slightly different than the one that it was next to. And if you buy any other brand or any other lens, like a 70 to 200 or a 35 or whatever, those are all different. And so you can cut and paste between the cameras to get close to where you want to go, but then you need a chart to tighten that solution all the way up to that thing. And that's what I have to admit that Benjamin has me thinking about a new. He's a smart guy. Anyway, so I use a Dumont chart, Chroma Dumont chart, and I have a couple of them that I cut through, and I'll show how I do that in a couple of weeks. I've learned not to schedule something the next week when I don't have it completely set up and I have it done it 10 times. Otherwise, it's a morning of stress for me of trying to make it work. Anyway, but I'm going to show you how I do it. But I realized Benjamin kind of unfolded what I was doing, and he said, well, you don't need that. You could just do it in a line and then just do a transition so you can cut all the bits and pieces. So anyway, I'm building a new chart based on Benjamin's idea. So I'm going to print it out and I'll post it for all of us. Like, this chart will work almost as good. It's not going to be a Chroma Dumont chart, but we don't need the colors to be accurate. We just need them to be there. And so that's what I realized talking to Benjamin about it. Was some post show or whatever. We were going through it, and I realized in my head, I was like, as I was talking to him, I was like, I don't need a perfectly accurate chart. Anyway, go ahead, Charles, and then Ken, and then we'll move on.
I'd like to know what settings or where in the camera, because my camera is inaccessible, right? So I don't like going back there. So if at any point we can go through that so that I can do that, because for Zoom, I just been shading my camera with the Bluetooth app, just to get it in tone with the lighting that I have and everything. But I'd like to
you have so much more control with the ATEM, to do that.
Right, that's the thing. But I would have to get back there, take off the camera and all that stuff. And I don't like to move anything around here.
The only thing that you have to change, I think, with the camera, there's only a handful of things you can't control with the Bluetooth app, but one of them is I don't think you can change. You might be able to change camera number. It's just camera number that you have to change so that the ATEM that it is connected to the same one. Or if you see what the camera number is, you just make sure you plug it into the right one on your ATEM switcher. Like if it's, so you just let it drive it if you don't want to go back there. But it's just a matter of it knowing which one to talk to. Because it's just raw data. It's going out of, on the SDI, it's going out of the VANC data, and on the HDMI, I believe it's going on the HDCP return. Is where it's kind of hopping onto that. I believe. I'm not 100% sure. So, but I know that it's the VANC data on the SDI. It's where they put captions. Is why you can't use captions and the cameras at the same time, because the cameras are right over it. Go ahead, Ken.
Yes, when you said Blackmagic cameras, do you only mean the 4K and the 6K cameras?
Well, you can do it with
Ursas.
You can do it with the Ursas, with SDI, and even the little micro, the micros. All the Blackmagic cameras that are relatively modern can see it. It's just a matter of whether it's SDI or HDMI as far as the return. If you have a ATEM Mini and a Ursa, you would need to get the Blackmagic HDMI to SDI converter, because because it has to be there. It has to that newest one that they have that handles two-way traffic. But if you have that, you should be able to, your switcher should be able to talk to your Ursa. A Mini can talk to an Ursa if you have that little converter.
Okay, I need to play with that then, because that's what I have, and it's not. I can't do those controls.
The most common problem is not having the right camera number. The camera isn't at the same number as the input. That's the most common problem with, my shading doesn't work, is wrong camera number.
Okay.
Yep. Next question.
Comes to us from John Idelson here in the panel from Monterey, California. For our project, we're looking at high-end headset microphones. Getting advice and strong opinions is what he's looking for. What is the panel's feeling about DPA versus Countryman?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, my opinion is it varies from voice to voice, so it depends. So if you're getting a lot of them, or a bunch of them, you can probably talk to a dealer nearby in California. There's Location Sound Corp, there's True Audio, and they could probably loan you one of each, and you can see which mic works best for each person.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I find the Countryman's just a little brighter, maybe a little bit clearer in the upper mids, but the Countryman has this body, and I mean the DPA, and this is throughout the whole DPA line. There's kind of a reason that they're kind of top dog in the lav field. But either one would work, and I think Mickey's right. You got to gauge the voice, because certain people might sound better on a 6 than on the DPA, but they're both excellent mics. You can't go wrong either way.
Go ahead, Mickey, and then Andy.
And yeah, just a note, having an idea of what kind of projects you might be doing soon. Countryman microphones, especially the B6, have quite the good water resistance. They're not waterproof, but they handle moisture a little better than DPAs.
Yep, absolutely.
The DPA.
Application matters here.
Excellent
There's a
mics.
live
You can't go
PA
wrong either
system.
way.
You're going to want to go with a directional
And yeah, just a
DPA.
note, having
One huge
having an
advantage
idea
to
of
the
what kind
DPAs
of projects
over
you might be
most
doing,
of the other
soon.
headset mics I've personally
Countryman
used
microphones, especially
is
the B6,
their
have
ease of
quite
getting
the
them
good
on and
water
off
resistance.
people.
They're not
What
waterproof,
DPA just
but
seems to
they handle
Andy, you're
moisture
getting
a little better than DPAs.
a playback back on
The
top of your
DPA.
voiceover.
Might be feeding
okay.
YouTube back to us or something. Andy.
Okay, wow, that was really confusing.
I was confused.
I was like, I couldn't figure out where I was in the pipeline. I was like, what is going on? Anyway, okay. So, by the way, the one thing that the DPA, one thing that the DPA has that the Countryman doesn't have is that they have a version of it that's a built-in IFB, and I'm very close to getting one because you can get 2-ear or single-ear IFB built into the headset, so that you just put one on and you have a single cable. And as someone who uses an IFB every day and a mic, now because I have a relatively good amount of bass in my voice, I go back and forth. I find the Countryman a little bit more present than the DPA, and I find sometimes without some EQ, the DPA can get a little muddy. But I do think that women almost always sound better on a DPA than a Countryman. Jeff?
Is this better, by the way? Did we fix my problem? Good. Sorry about that. The audio guy has an audio problem. No, I was going to say about the DPAs is application matters. And in my personal use, if there's a PA system, going with a DPA that's a cardioid really helps, because you've got some gain over feedback control. But the biggest difference for me between the DPAs and the Countryman's and some of the other headset mics is the DPAs are so much easier to get on and off people. They've just figured out the ear loop thing, and it just works so much better in practice. I've had issues where you've had to fight an old Countryman that's kind of bent out of shape. This does not happen with the DPAs.
Well, I think DPA took a lot of ground when they came out with the 2-ear, two over the ear, and Countryman was still a single ear. Like, don't ever buy one that's single ear unless someone's got heavy hair. Like, my wife has big braids, like thick braids, and so she can't wear a dual ear because it doesn't really work for her. But outside of that, I would. So she prefers a single side, but the dual ear really makes a big difference. Go ahead, Jeff.
General sound DPA is going to be more natural than Countryman, and I was just going to say the same thing you said, which is comfort is going to be the biggest thing. Keeping it in place is going to be way more important than the sound difference between a DPA and Countryman. So test out the headsets. Make sure you get something.
Comfort is a big thing, but the worry I have with the DPAs, I hear these horror stories about the microdot or the connection.
That's gotten a lot better. I mean, I will say. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Pete.
Yeah, get the core series that is pre-wired all the way through, doesn't have a microdot for your application, so you don't have to deal with the microdot issue. Yeah, definitely. And the Countryman's also have a connector that is also an issue. So
the funny thing is that I finally bought a DPA without the microdot, and within a week I needed to go from the XLR, which I bought it with, to a TA4, and I was like, oh, like I was just like it only took me a second, and I didn't have what I needed. Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, hey, the Tucker's point of the soldered on connector is definitely key for that microdot failure. The Countryman does have a similar connector up by the back of the ear that can fail as well. And then my personal experience with between the two is that they're both, you can get, well, the Countryman's Omni, the DPAs, you can get Omni or cardioid. The Omnis of both, the Countryman tends to pick up less noise around it, whereas the DPA will kind of reach out farther and you'll hear phasing between speakers. Another good option are the new Shure twin plexes, which are also pretty water resistant. And for me, I'm now using DPA or the Shures at this point.
Bill, real quick, we're going to move on.
Yeah, I once thought, because I went and did a lecture for about 250 people in a gymnasium type room, and the sound people there said, yeah, we spent a lot of time on our sound system. They handed me a Countryman. I put it on and I sounded incredible. I mean, so incredible that I thought, I'm leaving here and I'm buying this microphone. I bought the microphone. It came to me. I put it on. I started recording with it and I didn't like it. The EQ, the sound, the room, everything works together. So it's one of those, it depends. You might sound great on this model today and not sound as great in another set of circumstances.
I would always recommend buying the TA4F for when you're getting the direct hardwired one, and getting DPA makes the adapter, but Shure also makes the adapter that goes, and that's the easiest one to use across the board.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Alex Skolner, who's here on the panel from London. I'm investigating distributing effects, titles, and transition templates for Final Cut via my own app on the Mac App Store. I don't have Mac development skills to build the distribution app. Are there any ideas in the panel for who I could go to for help and how to share revenue for that kind of endeavor?
Mac programmers, difficult. It's because they're so busy. Like, so that's what held up my little drawing app for a long time. I'm now just partnering with someone to do it, but I'm paying for it. You know, like it's just going to cost money to develop it. Go ahead, Tucker.
Reach out in Discord. I've got a couple of different people that might be able to, they may not be able to solve the problem, but they can definitely guide you in that direction because they live in that world.
The hard part really is that it definitely takes a pretty significant amount of investment to get it, especially when you're doing e-commerce distribution and making sure that all those packages are delivered well. It becomes a heavier lift. Jonas?
If you want to go another way and stay away from the App Store, you could try Gumroad, where you could just upload the files and then sell them that way, and the people could download it. Then you don't have to program it and don't have to deal with all the payment restrictions in the store.
And you, Alex, you don't want to work with one of the more established ones that kind of do revenue sharing already with installs into Final Cut?
Well, I'd like to. I've made 60 or 70 free templates and plugins, and I kind of like the idea of basing it around that. And if I let one of them distribute those free ones, then they're getting all the benefit, essentially, of their platform getting better because all my free plugins are being used on it. So I kind of have to think in terms of going after myself and making sure that they don't benefit from it unless I think somebody to pay me, even though my plugins are free when those things are downloaded, which they're not likely to do.
I really, you know, we proposed something a long time ago. You know, one of the things we were looking at with Conduit, which was our nodal compositing application, was to never develop any features for it. I mean, develop the core app that does the thing that we needed to do without any of the bells and whistles, and then focus on its stability and its ability to do those simple things and make that free, and then build a really high performance tutorial and soft and updating, you know, like a really good API. And so the idea would be to spend all of your energy on the API and the core stability and ability of the app, and then you want to build it so it's super easy for everyone to publish to. You know, and I feel like that's what Final Cut and Motion are missing, is that kind of built-in. I don't think that should be on the App Store or even external plugins. I think that Final Cut and Motion should have something built in where you can just, there's a marketplace inside of it. There should be an app store, in my opinion, inside of Motion and Final Cut, where you just buy this stuff directly from, you know, I mean, Apple, if only Apple could figure out how to do an app store. I know it's hard. They haven't done it very much, but building it inside the app, and same thing with Keynote, same thing with, you know, all these other things of building all the services inside of the application. Like for instance, what would be great in motion, if you think about it, is models, like USDZ models, and being able to just buy them, inside of motion would be.
I proposed this like 5 or 6 years ago, and the idea is inside the store, as well as actual templates, you could have people offering services or look at your timeline for a few minutes or do consultancy and workflow, and they're actually inside the app while you work and doing tutorials and training and consultancy.
Well, and controlling the app. One of the biggest things about ZBrush was the ability to watch someone do something in ZBrush. When it first came out, it would just record what they were doing, and you could stop at any moment and start painting on top of what you could add. You could just stop that recording, because it wasn't a recording of video, it was a recording of actions, and it was a super powerful way to learn. But yeah, I don't anyway. So hopefully talk to Tucker, and we'll see hopefully we'll get some out there. Next question.
Moving on to Jonas Dettel of Reutlingen, Germany. Zoom, is there a way to hide some participants on the stream while showing the rest? Hiding meters, returns in a stream, but showing them to participants.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
Multi-spotlight is going to be the kind of one way. The other way is to do Zoom into Zoom. So you have one Zoom meeting that has your panelists and one Zoom meeting that has your participants, and you can kind of go ham with it.
And Zoom OSC as well. I mean, that would be the other thing you could do is Zoom OSC, where that controller is not, just turns all those things off the system. Next question.
Gabriel Ung in Malaysia is in with, for live streaming events like trade shows where there is no indication needed from attendees, what platforms would you stream to? Is it considered unprofessional to stream to YouTube and place a frame into a website? Or would it be better to use services like Daycast or Vimeo?
I think Drawcast, yeah. It's not unprofessional for YouTube. The fundamental problem is security. You can't really, there's no way, I mean, you can make it a private YouTube, but wow, it's really hard to get people, like a lot of people into it. So then you can do unlisted. The problem is anybody who can click through it and they can grab onto that link and share it on Twitter and do whatever they want. And so most people who want to do something that is more exclusive will use some version of a service that is some clear label service that lets them hide that and make it just an embedded. There's a couple different services. There's a lot of services that do it. I do think, my opinion right now is that Vimeo is the high watermark on that service. As far as what you can get and how easy it is and how scalable it is. You can go all the way from, you can start just doing live streams, but then you can go all the way to OTT apps that can be branded as your brand. And then you can go back and forth between VOD and live stream. They've really taken that all the way. There's a lot of smaller ones that are doing great work, but they're not in the same ballpark as Vimeo, in my opinion. Now I'm experimenting more with Azure and CloudFront and stuff like that. So I'm, because I want to be able to build my own, but I think that Vimeo right now, if I was going to do a turnkey, would probably be what I do. Go ahead, Leland.
I'm going to leave an example of a good friend of mine who's doing a vendor's show live over at crowdcast.io. She's been using this platform for years. It's been around. So I developed it back in about 2015 or 16 for these kind of virtual events. Just something to look into. You might get some ideas from the way she's running her show. I'm actually going to probably be one of her guests here shortly because she is a close friend. So I'll leave the link in the chat. Go see what they're doing over there, and it might help you get some ideas.
I feel bad. We tried Cloudcast. It just wasn't ready when we did it. All right, next question.
David Guzman in San Jose, California says, when you change the frame rate by adding frames, are these just dumb copies of frames, or are they interpolated between for the smoother effect? What about audio? Doesn't adding frames screw up the audio?
So typically your frames are working. Oh, go ahead, Roscoe, and then Mickey.
No, it's okay. Yeah, if you're adding frames, you're actually slowing down or slowing down the video. And this is why you buy DaVinci Resolve Studio, because it has optical flow and it will actually interpolate those in between frames as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, and optical flow is a hit and miss kind of thing. So you just want to be very careful with how you really have to watch what it does. Lots of straight lines, those types of things often don't. Things that are moving with lots of straight lines, optical flow is really good at organic trees and things. It can do fractals and figure that out. You give it a bunch of straight lines and you have them moving around, and it doesn't know what to do with that. You get a lot of tearing and stuff like that. So go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, back in the old days, you would actually play back the footage, the film, faster or slower. And for sound, it does play back faster, so you have to do a pitch shift on it. It's usually either 4% up or down, or a
And that's 25 to
0.01%.
24. That's between 24 and 25, right?
Yeah, for the 4%. But if you're going from between NTSC and film, it's up or down 0.01%, if I remember correctly. But nowadays, with the footage, with picture, yes, there are three typical ways of doing it. It's either you're just duplicating frames, which usually it's not great because you get stutter movement. Another one is you will do frame blending every 3 frames, if I have that correct. We call that the 2-2-3 pull down, or 3-2 pull down.
3-2.
3-2 pull down. Thank you, Roscoe. And then another one is what Roscoe mentioned earlier, which is optical flow, where it actually studies the motion of the footage, and it makes a smart guesstimate on the type of what do you call this, motion blurring that it would create, and that frame that is added. And for sound, because you aren't actually playing things back faster or slower, it should be exactly the same.
Next question.
Next question, moving on. Brant Kruger of Minneapolis, Minnesota says, what would you call a part that shifts the weight of a camera and lens backward on a tripod? Heavy lenses can make smaller tripods tip forward. I need to know what it's called before I can Google it. Note, dealing with a DSLR here, not broadcast level.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Called rails.
Well, there's rails, but there's also, I mean, so what you're looking at is and now I'm
camera
out of my head,
or the camera mount.
Go ahead.
Tripod plate. Yeah.
Tripod plate.
Yeah, tripod plate. The rails are more for mounting accessories, and the plate is you balancing the entire camera package together with accessories on the sticks on the head.
Cheese plate. And to kind of go, no, not a cheese plate. It's camera rails, or not camera rails. Camera plate. And these plates can get very long, and you can buy longer plates. Oftentimes that'll go onto your tripod, that you can buy longer plates that allow you to adjust back and forth. So it's just the plate that you put on the bottom of your camera, but you get a longer one so that and there's different standards depending on what broadcast piece that you have. Now, the way to set this up, and it's super important, when you put a heavier camera or a heavier lens on, you turn your friction all the way down on your head, and then you unlock it. And then you move your camera back and forth until it just sits there and it's balanced, right? And then you can lock it, turn you move that plate back and forth, and then you can lock it and turn up your friction to get it to where you want it. For the most part, I like pretty high friction because it creates a smoother motion, as long as step one is also under pressure. So a lot of cheaper tripods, when the first couple degrees don't have the friction, and that causes this little weird thing that you have to kind of push up against. But when I'm doing like a show, I want it to be almost, I'm pushing against the lens. It'll create a smoother motion. But one of the big reasons for that is it's easier to manage as a camera operator if it's balanced. The second thing is it reduces the wear and tear on your fluid head. So when your fluid head's constantly braking to keep it from going forward or back, it's actually wearing out your fluid head, and you'll know when you've worn it out because fluid will actually come out of the head. It will eventually start to leak, and that's because you put too much weight on it. And you can put a lot of weight on a tripod, but only balanced. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Mickey.
Yeah, the process is really, really important that Alex just described, and making sure that you do this with all the cables connected, because it's really easy to go up there, get it on there, and then not connect your cables. And you add your triax or add whatever your cabling is, and you're pulling it. When you go watch a broadcaster set up their camera sometime for a basketball game or something, they'll get it leveled, get it balanced. The way they set their friction is that they'll point the camera down, check the friction, hands off, hands on, and it should not drift at all. Point it up, and they just do it little bits, but once you have it completely balanced and locked down, then they can do their art. They're not fighting against the camera.
Yep. Go ahead, Mickey, and we'll move on.
And yeah, definitely, you don't want the friction to be carrying the weight of the camera. So as Alex mentioned, balance it. And also like one of the more popular standards for balancing plates is the VCT system, which I think is was created by a standard created by Sony and Fuji together. And you'll find that in a lot of broadcasts. It's like broadcast cameras. It's like a V-shaped plate. And if your tripod is tipping down, if the camera is tilted all the way forward or all the way back, that set of sticks and heads is way too small for that camera. You want to be able to fully tilt your camera without the sticks tipping at all.
Let's go Tucker real quick, and then we're going to go into speed round.
I misspoke when I said they're setting their friction. They're setting their counterweight, which on big tripods, there's a counterweight function and a friction function. You want to make sure the counterweight is what's set to not allow the pitch over.
Next question.
Michael Peters of Oakton, Virginia says, what's the best technology or black box to broadcast a live signal out of vMix to the internet? Live view or something else?
Yeah, so you're looking for, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can use for that. So that's just a simple box that's going to go out to the internet. The live view is probably the more expensive way to do that, but it definitely can do it. Teradeks the Teradek cubes will go out to that. As a small box that goes to the internet, I'm using the Elemental links, because they're Zixi and I just plug them in and they work. And I can completely control them from the cloud, so I don't have to think about it. This show will be finally, I got it all set up yesterday, and then I didn't go to the office today, this morning for the show. But starting Monday, you'll see the link going to another YouTube event. We'll let you know what it is. That is me testing, like just streaming from the link out. So those are the little boxes that you can just kind of throw in to make that work. I mean, I will always choose the link right now is the cheapest way to get Zixi. Like, it's just so like that's my little world lives around Zixi. Zixi is kind of the grown-up version of SRT. As far as getting a reliable input into the internet, it's the best in the world at the moment. I that's the box is just a little Zixi box to me. And that's web controllable. So those are the easiest. That's a simple box. But again, a Teradek works. You can buy little encoders with NUCs that'll do it. I mean, it takes a little bit more work, so you don't have to spend as much money. A lot of little boards. I mean, I've streamed 4K out of a little board that was $250. Next question.
Andrew Moyer of Oakville is back again with, while not an ideal solution, we're running OBS to a Mac to get two Logitech C922 cameras into a Zoom meeting. Any suggestions to improve performance as we're getting what looks like low frame rate and it's unusable?
You're asking to do a lot of things at one time. You're having OBS try to stream and cut and have multiple inputs. It's just your computer's running out of cycles. You need a bigger computer. Like is what and also out of a Mac, OBS is not great. Mickey and then JJ, and then we're gonna move on.
Yeah, definitely. OBS on the Mac isn't written nearly as efficiently as the PC counterpart. So you'd want a Mac that has at least a decent modern GPU in it.
Go ahead, JJ.
Any network issues, make sure that if any of that is networked, that you've got a high backend in your infrastructure.
Go ahead, Tucker, real quick, and then we'll move on.
I'd be interested in knowing if you're using the studio mode where it has the preview program function. I noticed with OBS on the Mac, engaging that function just drops any Mac to its knees. When you're not using the preview program function, it usually is very, very smooth.
Next question.
Mike Fisk of Spokane Valley, Washington, I believe, but it might not be. I saw a segment on the Today Show entitled, Could Zoom be taking a toll on your mental health? And he's got a YouTube link there. It's a concern I hadn't thought about and was wondering if what the panelists' take might be on it.
I think Zoom improves my mental health, especially this show and hanging out with everybody. Okay, this could turn into a half an hour, so we'll go real quickly around. But no, JJ and then Roscoe, then Tucker, then Mickey, but relatively quickly.
I've got to test that Zoom in the many ways in which we can connect to different people that might not be accessible otherwise absolutely has helped mental health in many different ways.
Roscoe.
I don't take my medical advice from national news.
Tucker.
Yeah, I would have to say that the group of people here that have been here for a very long time will probably all attest to the fact that this office hours has helped us get through this very, very difficult time. I definitely understand what they're saying, but they need to be engaging differently, probably.
Mickey.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, with what Tucker said. Like when the pandemic first hit, like this was my escape from, from all the craziness. And yeah, like being here like at least 2 hours a day, sometimes three, sometimes four, early on in the Saturdays running 7 hours. Like I agree with Alex's theory. It's the Zoom fatigue at least is caused by poor audio and poor video, and not having to mentally process that doesn't make it tiring at all.
And poor technique, like just people just talking over each other and doing all this stuff. Jeff, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, this segment on today's show was based on a Stanford research that just came out about Zoom fatigue, and they had 4 causes listed for Zoom fatigue. Interestingly enough, bad audio was not one of them, which I think is the biggest cause of Zoom fatigue. But I will put a link to that Stanford article.
Which is why I also don't take any advice from academics either. All right, next question.
Grant Whitehead of Adelaide says, Brian, Brain, any tips on using the X Touch with X32? Can you do custom layers? He says Brain, but is it Brian?
It's both. It's Brain we're talking about.
Yeah, the Brian Brain. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm assuming that he's referring to me because I have a big enough head to think the brain refers to me automatically. So I don't have any super specific tips. The X Touch integration with X32 was introduced by Behringer, I guess 3-4 years ago, and they haven't done much with it since. The X32 doesn't have custom fader layers yet, which means the X Touch doesn't have custom fader layers yet. The biggest tip I'd say is, and you can go online or hit me up in Discord and I can find the link for you. There are people that make overlay templates, because you can control the entire X32 console with an X Touch, right down to the mic pre's and the EQs and everything, but none of the labels on the top of the X Touch will match. So you need a template to overlay to make sure everything lines up correctly. And then this is the other thing that I always say every time this topic comes up, which is the only thing that works with an X32 is an X Touch. The X Touch Compact doesn't work. The X Touch Mini doesn't work. None of the other ones, even though they look similar, they have a very similar physical design. Under the hood, they're very, very different beasts. So what you want is the full-size X Touch with the silly little shuttle wheel thing on it.
Andy, real quick, 15 seconds, we're on speed round.
The cheat is you assign the DCAs to the X Touch, and then just whatever you want to control, assign to those DCAs.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
Pete Wajeska here from Chicago, and it was fun getting to know you through the band, said, is it possible that Zoom applies machine learning to auto-adjust overall audio levels, possibly based on an average? And if so, would this be the reason why levels change from meeting to meeting? I've experienced this phenomenon many times looking at the waveform of Zoom recordings.
I can't quite get my head around it, because I feel like Zoom becomes, every day, mine's changing a little bit but it's like really moving. And I can't quite, like when I turn on original sound, I kind of feel like it shouldn't ever change. But I agree with you that something's moving in the way that they're calculating it, and not in a good way. And I don't know exactly what's going on there, Bill.
Yeah, after 300 times coming into office hours, I don't think it's ever been exactly the same, more than maybe 3 times.
But
there's something going on.
I can say in the last 2 weeks, I've almost doubled the gain on my mic without changing anything other than Mickey telling me, oh, can you come up a couple? It's always, can you come up a little? Can you come up a little? And I don't know what the heck is going on that side. Tucker and then Jason, real quick.
I'd be interested in a test where the first person that joins the meeting has their audio set very, very quietly and talks for a little bit, and then do another one where you open and see if that first talker sets the base level for the meeting.
I think you're onto something.
Yeah. Right. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm living proof of this. My all digital pipeline is completely messed up right now.
Yeah. No, you and I are having the same problem right now. Go ahead, Jeff.
Pile microphone into an ATEM Mini Pro I've used at least 50% of the time, and I've never been asked for more than a 2 dB change.
Interesting. Okay. Next question.
comes from Ant Pruitt in San Francisco. He says, with the new S-Cinetone profile from Sony, the A7S III, I'm finding it seems more like a quick Rec 709 look instead of a log profile like S-Log 2 or 3. Does the panel have any thoughts? It seems like it's for a quick shoot and publish job more than shoot and grade. And I hate that I've missed so many office hours.
You got to come on more times, Ant. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Charles is the right person to answer this one.
Yeah. So from what I've seen, the test footage, it can be just a quick shoot and post, and then that's it. What I have seen is that it does add a little bit of an S curve, more like film, and it does lift the gamma a little bit up. And contrary to most of the Sony cameras that I work with, it tends to shift your gamma a little bit blue-green, which I found interesting. But aside from that, if you don't need to go back and post and tweak and pull keys or anything like that, I think it looks pretty nice.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I have the white papers for S-Cinetone up, and it says it is different in that it is designed to quickly and easily create rich-looking final content without the need for expensive post-production. So it seems like it's trying to emulate some sort of film look, but push it out as a final Rec 709 type of material. And I'll post the link in the comments.
And I haven't done. Does the Sony have a lot of its own LUTs that can you load LUTs onto the A7? I've never tried to do that. I've just shot in log all the time with the A7S. Because I mean, I think that's what I really love about a lot of the new cameras is being able to load a LUT of this is how I want to record it, or this is how I want to put it out. And as someone who does a lot of post, the idea of just shooting in 709, horrifying. You're like, what are you doing? But I understand for what Ant's doing, where it's fast turns. I'm going to record this. I'm going to put it out. It totally makes sense. But my post side of me just goes, oh, get all the data. Mickey.
Yeah, with the A7S 1 and 2, you can't load LUTs. I don't know about the A7S 3, but definitely the FS5, FS7 and above go all the way to Venice. You definitely can load LUTs on those.
Right. Next question. Last question.
Last question. David Brady of New York says, as my team slowly and begrudgingly retires Playback Pro, is there any life for their dedicated controllers? Can they be reprogrammed, reflashed, or taught new tricks? He said the controllers, not his colleagues.
I think the controllers were originally built by X Keys. I think they were actually built by them for it. And so, I mean, I think that they're just putting out keystrokes. I don't think that they're tied. I don't think you can reprogram what the keys do, but you could use what the keys do to control things. I think if you map them on, I don't think that they're directly connected, but I'm not 100% sure. Go ahead, Andy.
If that's the case, then central control, they support X keys. So hit that guy up.
I think the one thing they are sending a command into the computer. And so if you go man in the middle and put something in the middle there and read what is going through and then say, I'm just going to use those keys as this, there should be a way to receive inputs and make decisions based on those inputs. You may not be able to choose what they are, but it would probably take more work than what the controller's worth, but it'd be a fun Saturday project. So I think that could be a possibility. I had a couple of those controllers myself. I feel bad for those guys because they had it locked up. I mean, when you worked in events for, I don't know, almost a decade, the only thing you used is Playback Pro, and what got them was exactly what made them great was they had ignored the operating system, and that's why we get smooth playback. And then it caught up with them when the operating system changed a lot. All right, here we go. We're here. We've got the band. How do we want to start this? You got to tell me how it all began. I think we have to start at the beginning. Victor, we had an idea.
Sure. It began here in one of our office hours. We were talking about music and so on, and someone said, could have been you, Alex, I think it was you, we should form a band. And he said, but you said, but I won't run it. I don't have the bandwidth. And so I raised my hand and said, I'll take it on as the project person on it. And then we went down the Yellow Brick Road. Thanks to everybody who's lined up. We got a Discord room and we all started talking. And we began to say, okay, how are we going to go about this? And that, of course, the first name was figuring out a name, which is always like the hardest thing a band ever has to do is figure out a name. So we rather quickly, we had band meetings on Zoom pretty regularly, and so we figured out the name. The band is really called Remotes Office Hours Band because The Remotes is another band that's out there on YouTube, and we didn't want any issues. So it's Remotes. And so we started down the process of then how are we going to go about doing this from a logistics perspective. And, we have a lot of smart people that signed up. Greg Curta was able to provide us a central location to put up spreadsheets so everybody could say what everybody plays and what are their skill sets and what are they willing to do. So that list is still out there and open to everyone because this is just the first project. And the people that you're going to see here today that participated are one of many. I mean, we want a lot more participation. We'll have another project starting here in March. One of the things that we said right away is that we want to do about one every couple of months, and we didn't know if that was going to be possible, especially because this first one was pretty intense in scope, probably a little bit bigger than we should have bitten off the first time. But you know what? Maybe it'll get easier now. So we are going to do originals, like what you'll be hearing today is one of Brian Anderson's songs that he had in his pocket for years when it was being used to demonstrate a piece of equipment from Roland, and he had written it as a MIDI file to demonstrate that piece of equipment, and it had a cool blues vibe and stuff. And so we said, okay, we're going to go for that the first time, but we are going to do covers in the future without a doubt. And so if you're interested, if you have skill sets, not just in music, folks, editing, graphics, audio mixing, mastering, we can use your skill sets. Go sign up. We have a new song that's going to be, decided upon here, likely featuring our own Daria on vocals, even though it won't be one of her songs. So, get out there, and then we can get into the weeds after we see the video of this first trial here. We had a lot of dedication, and the group without fail was using the ruthless review model all along the way, as I'm sure everyone will attest to. We are a very nitpicky bunch, and so I did have to do a little bit of cat herding in that area sometimes, but it's been a blast, and mostly we are having a ton of fun. So if you're missing out on that fun, you're going to want to be part of the next projects for sure. So I think we play it out, and then we react from there and open it up. And
Mickey, let's spotlight it and let Guy. Once we get it spotlit, let's Guy, go ahead and play it out.
You can stop.
There you go.
Unbelievable.
That was
Fantastic.
so great. So great.
So,
And what a fantastic group of people. I mean, Bill Davis edited this, which was monumental. And I think what we'd like to do is just have
Really
some
well
of the
done.
people that played on it and did the work.
Yeah.
Pete mixed it. A great effort. And I think for being the first effort, we hit it out of the
Amazing.
ballpark, if I must say so
Oh, yeah.
myself.
I thought it would be cute when you guys said you were going to do it. I had no idea. So I got to see it last night. It was on my, to make sure that I wanted to make sure someone had it. I wanted to make sure that I didn't know, I couldn't until this morning. I wasn't sure who was playing it and what was happening. And guy was taking it over. And so I got it downloaded and I watched it and I had it open on the speakers and it sounds really good, and so it sounded good. It looked good. It just amazing work. I was just blown away. So yeah. Who wants to talk about a little bit of the, what it took to do it?
What was the workflow? I'm dying to know.
Greg, why don't you cover a lot of this since you were intimately involved in all of it and kind of took on the role of musical leader from that perspective, which I thank you for.
Well, I kind of like Chris's description as workflow. I think in our case, let's see, we had the MIDI, of course, the MIDI version of the song that Brian did, for Roland at the time. And we were using that as a guide. We also generated a click track that went through the whole thing. And of course that lined up, perfectly. And then we started doing parts. And one thing that happened is that while we were having discussions, Mike Sweeney, who's not here with us today, but he's listening, he was Johnny on the spot, and he put in a part right away. Unfortunately, what had happened is we changed some of the things in the chart, so that his part no longer matched anything, and he didn't have time to redo it. So that's why he bailed on the drums and said, okay, well, I can do percussion. I can do the congas. But then I think one by one, we kind of played to the track, and
Who
Brian
created
had
a click track?
Yeah, we created a click track, but unless there's really a solid bass and drum track already established, it's very difficult for everybody else to play to something. They have to play to something. So we decided that the thing that we had to play to was the MIDI file.
Right.
Okay, and I think our version is not considerably different, but excuse me, the feel is. So there were some challenges. I think the first thing that happened is like I'm want to do. I decided to change the bass part entirely, and created this new bass part, and it just was very, very simple and very, very kind of driving, and everybody liked it, so we went with it. But there were some parts in there that I changed too. I had a whole different part in there for the first solo that just, the more I listened to it, the more I didn't like it. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And so I changed that and put that back in. The various parts kept coming in. And what we did is when we made the track, we put two bars of click at the top. And then we started the track, and everybody played to that same thing. So as long as you rendered out a complete, a complete version, the track should just lay right in.
Right. And how'd that work?
Okay. Actually, it worked really, really well. The other thing is that there's always little timing issues. Hardly any musician can play straight onto a click. I mean, the seasoned studio pros, yeah, that's what they get paid for. But for us fun guys, where it's a little bit back and forth, and so there was some adjustment that had to be made, but you're going to do that anyway. I think I made some assembly cuts as we went along, just assembling the various things that as they were coming in, and sent them out, and people listened to them, and then Pete started going, and just coming up with all kinds of great stuff, and I think it was just piece by piece by piece by piece.
Part of it really had to do to just with, like, at the beginning, we established some rules about naming conventions for files, what kind of format we were going to use. As a WAV files 48, we had to establish a place where these files were going to go to. Greg had his Google Drive, which we were able to use as a repository for that. But there were challenges, like if you saw, I was playing 4 different saxophone parts, so I had to overdub 4 different times. And so as I went about the process of recording that raw audio, I tried to line up by cutting my parts as a section as much as possible. So what I delivered to Pete was as close as I could get it to that. But of course, as in editing, which I'm sure Pete will speak to, the editor has to move stuff because we wanted it to groove. In some cases, for example, on my saxophone solos, it sounded better if we laid it back on the track, if we just nudged it a few frames one way or the other. So those are the kind of things that we did to have it sound musical. And then we stated that, we had to serve the song first. That was a principle.
Go ahead, Jeff Francis.
So did you tackle audio first and then deal with video afterwards?
100%. Yeah, that's exactly how it was done.
So everyone, by the time you did the recording of the video, you had all you were rehearsing to the final track.
We're rehearsing to a version, an edit of the final track.
Something close to the final track.
And we are, lip syncing or playing, but playing live, but that's not what you guys are hearing. You're hearing
at least the final arrangement, at least.
Yeah. Now that was not the original idea, though. The original idea was we were going to film ourselves laying down the track.
Right.
Okay. And I mean, if this were a comedy show, that probably would have been really fun.
Exactly.
But it would have been an absolute disaster in terms of timing and feel and everything.
It'd be really fun for you to record that in the future, not for the video itself, but just as behind the scenes of seeing what it actually looked like when you recorded. I'd love to see that video as well. Like that could be an ancillary video.
I want to cut that video.
Yeah. So there you go. Now you booked Chris. So Chris is ready to cut the behind the scenes. Not the clean show. The rough track. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, that assumes we could do it in one take, which I don't think any of us could. If we'd be lying if we said we did. The one thing I was going to say that we changed, that we altered from the original version. The original version had some tempo changes in it, and I knew that was going to be impossible. So when Greg was talking about Mike Sweeney cutting a drum tack, he cut to the version that had the tempo changes, and I rewrote the beginning and the end so that it took that away, and that kind of set us up to succeed. We knew it was going to be 158 beats per minute and just go.
I just want to know when the cowbell was removed, and whether anyone was, told about it.
I almost asked for one.
You weren't available, Alex.
Almost. You did not need any more instruments.
That was supposed to be me. The cowbell was supposed to be me.
Go ahead, Leland.
Out of nowhere. So I saw the WLM meter in the video, and I had to ask, was that used throughout the production to get a level on audio, or was it something that was used in post to match everything up? And how did it work out for you? Was it a useful tool, or was it something that just made more work for you in the end?
I didn't ask Mickey for that until after the whole thing was done. I just was looking for another visual element for a reason.
Go ahead, Sky.
Yes. Speaking of visual elements, Bill, well done. So great. The concept of how do you crowd that many people in on a tiny little space. I realized I needed good headphones on because what an amazing sound. Just fantastic that what you did. And again, I loved the visual variants that you ran with. I didn't realize Brian Anderson was an octuplet though. My gosh, there was more Anyway, it was all fantastic. So I cried. It was such a great piece of creativity.
Go ahead, Pete, and then John, and then we'll go to questions.
Uh, Great project, Victor, everyone. Man, it was such a pleasure to be part of the group. As we were talking about assembling, one of the challenges, as we're talking about lip sync and just sync in general, one thing I realized is not necessarily the player's ability to play to track, but whatever device or DAW that they were listening back in all had a little bit of a different latency. So, Dale's rhythm guitar, 200 milliseconds back, put it right in, Greg's bass, right on. But the amount of differences that we had in everyone's setup and the way that everyone recorded was so drastic. And it's the same when you do like iPhone singers and stuff. It's the same kind of deal. So you have to strip away the traditional time code syncing and more of those kind of more professional broadcast techniques and use, waveforms and ears and Greg and Brian and I had a few late night,
amazing
sessions of how do we want this to come together, and it was definitely a group effort by everybody.
Pete, can you talk a little bit about how many tracks we ended up using and what kind of time you put into this? Because it was a monumental amount of time to get it to groove like it did.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it's fun, it's an art. It's I do it for a living, so it's not quite a hobby, but I enjoy what I do. So sure, it's a little bit of that too. A bit of time because, Brian did a great job composing it and putting the pieces together and having MIDI tracks to judge how the song should be. But everyone has their own style and their own flavor and their own color and all of that stuff. And so once we started getting the parts in, we really had to make some judgments as producers of the event. I would say Victor and Brian and Greg mostly were Greg was more of the music director. Brian was a little more of like, well, this was the intent of that part or this part, and Victor for feel. And so my job was to take their wishes and translate it the way that I think it should be translated. And if I didn't quite hit it, they would let me know, or someone in the band would say, hey, I really meant this part to sound like that, and so that portion of it really is what took a lot of the time. Lots of remixes. Normally you would start with rhythm section, get drums and bass laid in. You might re-record them later, but you really need that bass. This time around, we didn't have a drum track until the very last thing, and so that did cause a bit more work for Greg and I. Mostly Greg, actually. Greg spent a lot of time from the musical direction to get that dialed in, but in terms of the whole thing, it was 63 tracks, I believe, with subgroups on top of that. So, there's a lot going on in that song. And if it hadn't been arranged the way that Brian arranged it, it could have really been a big just mess. And it came together really nicely, I think.
John, real quick, and then we're going to jump to questions because we're stacking up.
Yeah, and Pete, you said the band. I was in a dance band in high school, which was miserable and very bad, but we were part of the band, and playing the crazy proms was only part of it. It was hanging and doing it, and we were part of the band. And when you said the band, I had the sense, do you guys feel like you're the band, the social psychological group now, having performed together and created this?
I think Victor did a great job bringing us all together. We had band meetings weekly, and that felt like, after work, going to the band meeting, for me anyways.
Yeah, and I think we have created a cohesiveness. There was 13 people involved in this first project, and so I think among those 13 members, the band members and all the supporting, we've created a camaraderie that is going to serve us well for future projects. And we had a bunch of key learnings of what we would do different, which we can talk about a little later.
Well, and I think that, one of the things I'm excited about is that, I didn't see anything until last night. Like, it was just like, it was just like this mysterious thing. I didn't want to know. I wanted to see the finished one, just to not have anything there. It was just amazing. And what I see possible is, you have Daria coming in next. We have obviously relationships with other singer-songwriters that may not have a whole band. that could come and do some of their songs and do a remote rendition of their, the stuff some people have already been on, and so
Exactly.
where they work with us and if we figure it out so that we know if we reach out to an artist that can do that, or if I reach out to some people that I know that we know that it can be a smooth transition for them. So 3 or 4 songs in, we know, Daria will be more adventurous. She's ready to just dive in and make it work. But you guys have already got a lot of learnings out of this one. There'll be a lot of learnings on the next one of how do we work with the singer and how do we do these other things. And so I think that you could get to a point where we're doing these songs and we're working with, more and more artists that may not have that whole piece involved, and it could be pretty exciting. So,
Alex,
anyway.
you're thinking making a house band of the remotes.
Yeah. So, but it just being able to bring in the Darias, the Peter Hillmans, the Brian Vander Arks, that type of thing, and having them sing, and then having the band do the stuff, or maybe sometimes the band sing and someone else play something, but it just I think there's a lot of possibility here.
And one of the keys to that is going to be Brian, who has this compositional arranging background and can make things like charts, which make things like up section parts possible. So we couldn't have done it without that kind of talent.
Yep, absolutely. Greg, and then we'll move on and we'll go to the questions.
Yeah, I mean, just one more thing I just wanted to point out is that, we didn't know each other musically at all when we started this. And we didn't have a chance to rehearse, and we didn't have a chance to play together and lay down the basic tracks like you would in a studio. You'd rehearse something, say, no, that's not quite right. Can you change it to this and this and this? Okay, let's try that, blah, 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 blah. We had none of that. Okay. But at the end of this, we all know where each other is coming from now. Yeah. Okay. And there were no fights. It was all way too reasonable. It was entirely too reasonable.
No drunk drummer coming in,
There was no rehab.
Nobody getting arrested at the gig. So all of those things did not happen.
All right, let's go. Let's jump to the questions.
Only green M&Ms.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
The first one comes from Ray Maxwell, who asks, have any of the musicians explored just tuning rather than the well-tempered scale?
We're just trying to tune, period. So we're not going to go to just tuning at this point of our careers because we're tempered. So there's my fancy answer for you.
Can you explain that for everybody? What he means? Go ahead, Greg.
I can't remember. Just is another tuning system. There were many tuning systems. Pythagorean was
Brian's like waving his hand.
I got this.
Okay.
So as a French horn player, it comes down to physics. The intervals. Oh, I'm sorry. A little excited here. Yeah. The intervals in the scale are mathematical, and if you do it right, and you can look it up on Wikipedia, but a piano is not tuned correctly from a physics perspective. But and we have all become adjusted to that, and a guitar is the same kind of thing. Now, this thing, just as an example of dabbling with just tuning back in the day when this was my main axe and I was playing Handel's Messiah, let's say, I used to sit and take my horn apart, and I would pull slides out and just lay them on the stand, and pretty soon I'd have parts laying all over the place, and the choir singing was going, what's wrong with this guy? He's got half a horn. It's because using just tuning in your hand, you could play with most of the parts out of the horn and play the whole thing because it was written in the time when you didn't have valves and couldn't play some of those things. So that's about as close as I've ever gotten to doing just tuning. Most of us today, if you were to listen to something that's played with just tuning, you would go, ugh, it sounds wrong, but because our ears have become accustomed to equal temperament.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
An octave is an exact doubling of frequency, and we split that up into 12 notes equally, and that gets us our normal equal temperament scale. So those are to go a half step is a 12th root of 2, so it's about a ratio of 1.05 with a whole bunch of decimals after that. Well temperament and the other systems are often based on more even ratios, so 3-2 and 9-8 and things like that. The problem is that the harmonics on a particular note, so when Brian plays a middle C, There are harmonic sequence of overtones in that note. It's not just a pure 262 hertz. It's got multiples of that are integer multiples. That contains a note really close to E, which is a major third above that. However, it's not the E that we use in the equal system. So if someone is going to play an E along with Brian, they would actually play it slightly flat to sound better with Brian. So music is a big mess. That's why guitars are never in tune with themselves.
And Brian has a French horn sitting on his desk.
Let's stay focused here. Ray?
Yeah, it turns out that a barbershop quartet who sings a cappella or a chamber music group that has non-fretted instruments, violins, cellos, etc., play in just tuning. The ear, they will tune their instrument it's micro tuning. Any rate, there was a company here in Vancouver called Just Tonic who designed a piece of software that if you had a micro tunable synthesizer, you could take a keyboard instrument or a fretted instrument like a guitar, and you could run it through this software and it would turn it into just tuning, which gives you perfect harmony rather than close harmony. And any rate, the thing you have to understand is you have to look at the chord you're playing, in other words, the harmony, and this key signature you're in to know how to microtune each note. In other words, if you play B flat and you're in one key and you're playing a certain chord, B flat is different if you change to a different chord and so forth to keep the harmonies perfectly numerically synced. And like I say, barbershop quartets, you hear that real tight harmony, that's just tuning. And you hear a small chamber group, they will instinctively play in just tuning. But when they play in the whole orchestra, where there are valves and woodwinds and all this, and pianos, keyboards, then they have to play in the well-tempered scale, which is a compromise.
And I'm going to move on. We're going to turn this into a second hour. so this is, we just went into like the PhD version. We'll talk about tuning in the whole second hour. We got a ton of questions, but this is amazing. Like I didn't know what just tuning was until you guys started talking about it. So I don't know those things. And I'm just country boy, just watching, but I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I realized I had gotten too deep into it. So we will get all of you. I'll make sure that all of you can show up on another day, and we're going to talk about just tuning. In fact, Tuesday, maybe, if you guys are available, we can't because Jeff's not available. Jeff needs to be here. So we'll find a day that we can do it all together and talk about that. So keep that thought. But I really want to come back to that. Someone put that in the second hour because this is fascinating. Like just tuning in chords and notes. I think we should have a whole second hour on in one of the audio days, or we'll pick it another day that Jeff can be here. All right, next question.
Vincent Alvarez of Bellingham, Washington says, has any of the band members ever met in real life? Have any of the band members ever met? And more than going to NAB and so forth. I don't think any of us ever met anybody.
I feel like there's some kind of turning point of this, is that a bunch of people that have never met each other creating a really refined song, not like a fun little thing for YouTube, but an actual song that's really well put together and technically and musically very, very high quality and performance wise. There's something about that came out of this. There's these moments within this group, and I think this is one of those turning moments. Next question.
I think part of that is dedication to the detail that went into this, and the perseverance that this group had not to put out something that we were not going to blow away people with.
Yeah, fantastic. Next question.
Andrew Moyers of Oakville, Ontario, Canada says, where can I download the track so I can replay it through a better sound system? And I will say that Brian's song, I would say it rocks, but actually it swings. That was a great piece.
You going to put it up on Spotify? Is that where it's going? Thinking about it?
We haven't decided. Bill has the link to the video, and we need to put that out. I'm sure some of us will probably put it out in our own YouTube channel, but it would be great if we could live, on here. That would be wonderful. But the actual distribution to the world really hasn't been decided upon at this point.
Next question. And if you're a panelist, go ahead and ask questions in the Mukana so that everyone can vote on them and everything else. Go ahead, next question.
Fenwick wants to see my timeline, but I think if I bring up the timeline, I'd be happy to. It's very kind of complex, as you can imagine, with that many players.
Okay. We want to see it. Fenwick wants to see it.
All right.
No one else wants to see it, but Fenwick wants to
Well,
see
the thing is, I might not be able to get to a question afterwards because it takes up both of my screens, but that's okay. That's what we're doing today. So let me see. Somebody's going to have to let me share screen.
I'm okay with your challenges, Bill.
I know. I understand that.
I'm okay that you have to work hard.
Thanks. I appreciate it. All right. So let's do a screen share here. How is that? Oh, gosh. So I've opened that. It's blown everything
And
else
Pete,
away.
I'm warning you that we're gonna want to see your project too. Is that something you can do?
Opening it right now.
Okay, good. Okay,
Share screen, and here is my desktop. And if I hit share, hopefully you guys will be able to see this. And let me get back up to the top. So can everybody see that?
Yep.
And so you're seeing a whole bunch of storylines, actually libraries in Final Cut. Is that correct?
Yeah, we just see the upper left-hand corner of the browser.
Yeah,
Okay.
You see the media.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted you right in there. So this was the process. The biggest challenge I had, obviously, was there were so many performances and so many, a player would give me 3 or 4 cameras and there would be 16 players. And so just managing things. So I did a lot of multicams. You'll see multicams for Victor. You'll see Brian's multicam, just a whole bunch of stuff. This is actually the timeline that I spent most of my time working in. And why aren't you launching? Let's see. Oh, here, that's because it's over here. So I have to reshare, or let me just drag it over here. Oh, I can't drag it over there. It's on a second screen. So I'm going to have to stop share this and share you do a reshare of my second screen. You can imagine there was a lot of just trying to figure out how to make everything.
So you're building those projects as essentially, are they compound clips or are they?
No. Well, here was the issue. I knew things were going to come in late. There were things that were key elements. For example, as you remember, Andy starts out with a guitar riff, but then Victor comes immediately in. And so when I realized that I was going to have these dueling things, I wanted to pick the best parts of things. So I started making multicams of individual players so that I could watch through them and make notes about who was where. Here's the timeline. You can see, or I hope you're seeing scrolling through it. It's not ridiculous. And actually it got much bigger than this. This is a lot of cut down from where it was. The thing was,
this is a simplified version.
With all the small boxes that I wanted to populate, and I wanted to pay attention to whether I was duplicating people. I mean, I had 3 things that I really wanted to do with this whole project. Number one, I wanted to quote Zoom a little bit because that's where we all met and stuff like that. I wanted to show that this was an ensemble piece because we had people playing together. And I wanted to let everybody who saw this watch the music being made. So it was all about performance all the time. And then I just figured that I would use the size of windows to direct the viewer's eye while other things happen in the background. Hopefully, as you watch this over and over, you'll start picking up some of the little things that are going on in the other things. And in fact, Brian gave me some great little moments where he's just like goofing around with his French horn, and they're buried the first 4 times you see it because you have so many things to look at. So that was what I was trying to get accomplished with the way that I approached this. We all met on Zoom, so I wanted to look a little zoomy without quoting it directly. I didn't want to put names and little red mics and stuff like that. And then just make sure that we saw a lot of people playing a lot.
Yeah.
Great. What was beautiful about this is that Bill did the vision mixing for this. He wasn't giving any direction other than you're the talent editor and vision mixer, and so we had not seen it until he provided it to us, and that was really great because we didn't need a bunch of people giving opinions on that part of it because that's Bill's skill set, and so that was a lesson that we're going to, believe me, carry on to the future. That when we get the person who's editing video, vision mixing it, astonish us and Bill hit it out of the ballpark.
Yeah, Greg.
And I just wanted to say that the WLM meter in the bottom was to show our commitment to 24 and honor Mickey.
That's great.
But did you notice that I slipped a 16? As the song got louder, I pushed up to a new meter. It's all red. So you'll see that next time.
That's great. Go ahead, Pete. Can you show us the
sure,
audio?
Yeah. Yeah. And I just got to say, it was great working with Bill, total professional. We were able to pass files back and forth, and everything always lined right up. I'll go through.
Same exact thing with Pete. I could not have done this without him, because there were things that we changed that in the last thing, and if he hadn't been so responsive, it never would have gotten done.
And technically, Frame.io was the key to the video exchange of files. We couldn't have done it without Bill providing that pipeline. It was so awesome.
Agreed. I chose to use Logic for this project for no particular reason. I usually use Pro Tools or Logic. I do see a question in there about DAWs. Everyone used their own form of recording wherever they were, and I think that workflow was set up before I got involved, and I think that was a brilliant idea from Victor and Greg to set up that way, because you want people to record in the fashion that they're most comfortable doing. And so the MIDI guide tracks were sent to everybody with Click, and then it was up to each person to come up with their own, I think, way. Is that right, Victor? Their own way of capturing their performance.
That's right. We just required at the end, they would just send a 48 WAV file.
Yeah. So like Greg was Pro Tools, but Jeffrey was using Reaper, I think, and Brian uses Digital Performer. So we were using pretty much all the DAWs on this project. So this is the project Smashdown. It says 86, but some of these are subgroups, and you can see the amount of adjustment every time you see a cut in one of these tracks. It's Greg and I making decisions, and some of these tracks Greg cut up, re-exported as a adjusted form, and I was able to drop it back in. Now everything's slid down by 10 bars. The session is set up per Brian's tempo. And so when we first started the project, every file started at the same exact spot. So all I had to do was drag it in, line it up on bar 1 or bar 0. And for the most part, it got me within the ballpark. And then we would adjust, a 16th of a beat or a couple hundred milliseconds or something like that. And so and then more globally, when Bill had a cut for me to lay in, I brought his video in here, shifted everything 10 beats down to get the start of the video. And that shows up in this little side window here, so that I can actually now take what he's cutting and do a final mix based on what he's showing on screen, because your brain always wants to hear what you see on screen. And even if like there's instances with the congas or with the rhythm guitars where they're pretty low in the mix, but because you're seeing them play, you can actually hear them even though they're way down and you would normally not even hear it. It's very funny how the eyes and ears connect in the brain like that. Same thing with mixing. The song sounds totally different to me when I listen to it through this DAW versus when I export it as a wave and listen to it through the same speaker. Like it's just some mind thing that happens. So I'm going to turn on automation here, and you'll be able to see. Let me see if I can zoom out. So each one of these numbers and dots signifies a fader move on a mixing console, basically. And so you're basically, when you get in here and get into the nitty gritty, I'm looking at waveform. Organ is a good track to look at for this. So if we look at Brian's
and
organ,
what control board are you using?
I'm not. It's all mouse and keyboard, and
right.
You can record fader moves as you play it, and it'll actually, the DAW will record your manual moves of faders, but it's not as exact when you're actually like doing a post mix like this.
Hey, can I nudge Pete to talk about something that changed in the song? So we had an arrangement, and I played a guitar solo, for example, that, you know, was 2 rounds of 12 bars. And then Greg had the great idea that Victor and I trade licks, which is what you hear in the final track. And here's the interesting part is that Victor and I did not work together on that. The producer my producer didn't show up for my tracking session. Alan Smithy, I believe his name was. I don't know if anybody's going to get that joke. But anyway,
everybody in video does.
Yeah, exactly. We'll explain later. But anyway, so what was amazing to me is there's 2 things going on here. One is that trying to maintain the groove at 158 beats per minute is tough. It's easier to lay back when you're playing a slower tempo song. And the way that factors into this is that Pete moved Victor's sax part from one part of the song to another so that we could trade. And Pete had to get that timing right, because as soon as he moved it, the timing, there's no timing reference. So he's doing that by ear. And with sort of the group of us, or a few of us, just said, oh yeah, like move it a few milliseconds this way, a few milliseconds that way. And you know, that's the beauty of this. And we had no idea we were going to do that until halfway through this process. So
in one of the band meetings, Pete actually opened the door and we were sitting there giving him feedback, and he was nudging things back and forth until it felt in the pocket. Didn't know the term is in the pocket. And it was all about this song. We felt was about hitting a pocket here, especially like you said, Andy, at that 158. That is a very fast speed for this kind of a song.
And that goes into the music. Andy's comment goes into the music direction part of it that Greg had. So we would find that sax solo as a whole worked out over the guitar solo. Then Greg would take those tracks and make them musical sounding because they didn't record them together. And he, like this part of the sax right in this area, that was actually Victor's start of his tenor solo that Greg put at the end, because I didn't want to lose the sound of that particular like 8 bars because it was so musical sounding. We had to have it in there somewhere. Greg took all that. So it was definitely it was definitely a committee and a group effort, and everyone just brought their talents to the table in different ways to assemble this thing. It was really cool.
And by the way, I'm going to let everybody know that we're going to go over. Don't worry, there's a lot of questions there. I'm going to challenge you guys to gather a lot of content in different areas, because I think that the next time you do a song, we should really dedicate like 3 or 4 hours on a Saturday to go through it. So rather than a second hour, I think this is like a Saturday of, you know, this is like a master's course on building this, and we're not going to do it justice. In fact, I'm open to opening a whole nother Saturday for this one, you know, to maybe down in the next little bit. We have an off on March 6th where we don't have Resolve. So if you guys are interested, let me know. Think about it amongst yourselves, but we'd like to just like a little mini conference. So we'll keep on doing this. We're going to go through the questions pretty quickly here, so that we don't go too far over. But I think that we should set up a little mini conference for this thing, and for each one of these songs, to make sure that we wring out all the learning that we can get as a group from, you know, you guys are cutting, you know, through the forest with machetes, and we just want to make sure that everybody else is benefiting from that hard work, because it's just amazing.
Great idea.
Amazing. Yeah. So we'll work on that, like a 2 or 3, 4 hour, whatever, discussion in a couple weeks, where we really break this all down and think about the format you want to do and how you want to do that. And we'll move forward with that. Let's go to the next question.
Comes from Robert Baker of Rockville, Maryland. What was the NLE used, and was there a template for the boxes, or was it done on the fly? There was no template. It was Final Cut Pro. And I thought I put in a classic Final Cut title template so that everybody who knows Final Cut would go, oh yeah, he must have cut it in Final Cut. But right. No, there's nothing templated about that. I built all of them, and it's an interesting piece that we'll probably talk about when we do the longer thing. OmniGraph will really save my bacon more times than I can tell you.
That's great. Next question.
Leland Best, who designed the logo? I must have missed that memo. Well, that was great, wasn't it?
A fantastic logo. Who did that logo?
Yeah, that would have been. I'm sorry.
Kent King.
That's right. Kent King from Charlotte, North Carolina. And of course, also let's not forget Charles Klein did all the colorization on this as well. So that's a whole other piece that I would love to see broken down personally.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I watched that today and I said, oh my gosh, Greg Curtis' Hawaiian shirt was blue. I've been living with this thing for 2 months and I never knew his shirt was that blue. So
Charles, do you want to show any, like, do you have that? Is that convenient for you, or is that, where's Charles? Did Charles? Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So when I first got the cut, because I didn't know what Bill was going to do. I just knew that they were going to give me something.
Neither did Bill.
Yeah. And I was going to get something. And at first I was like, okay, so when I saw all the clips, I was like, oh boy, it should be interesting. So
what did I get myself into?
Right. But the cool thing about it is that it's a good exercise on turning things around really quickly, but having a baseline. So what I did is that I did a few grades and I sent them to Victor and Bill, and I did a balance. And then I just happened to be watching a few movies like Ocean's 11, and I got a little too carried away. So we went with the balance grade. And here, what I ended up doing was, because I can't have a node for each of the videos, right? So I had to have a window for each of the videos.
Oh, no.
So I broke everything up. This is only, that part that you saw is a 2/5 of the timeline that I could view up to 16 clips on my monitor, right? So each one of those little windows has a window in Resolve with its own little grade. But then I went from cut to cut. I had to transfer those over.
So would it have been easier if you had color graded before Bill edited it?
Yes, but the way that we were doing stuff, because with everybody working on their own work, and this being a passion project, we were working on the side of other things. So when I would get something from Bill, it's easier for him if I just get it like this and I find a solution.
Right.
So,
well,
yeah,
Bill, you had something like 37 pieces of raw video that you dealt with?
Oh, no, there were more than that. It was up close to 60 because we had so many multiple things. Charles did an amazing job. I can't believe that he's got that turned around that fast and it looks that good, because they're just, this is 7 different cameras. I don't know if people use phones. I just kept getting these things in my inbox and I had no idea what they were. So I just immediately transcode them into ProRes 422 and stick them in something and try to label them intelligently and think, okay, I'll figure out whether that goes into multicam or whether it's an ISO shot or whether it's a solo or what later. And so it was just, there's a lot of organization for this one.
I would like to personally apologize to Charles and Bill for only white balancing one of my 3 cameras.
If your part wasn't so outstanding, Andy, and I thought really that was one of the most musical guitar leads that I've heard in a long time. I just thought you crushed it with that. So all was forgiven when we heard the work.
I love the little capo cam. I saw that. I saw what you did there.
Did you like that?
I had to do it. It was well, okay. I gotta ask one thing about this. It's the first time I've ever done that. I've been in a band. I was in a band for a few years, but the down the neck shot and it was a GoPro, literally a GoPro. Yeah. I could not wrap my brain around, like, do I put the camera sideways? I mean, like, how do I get this to, like, because it was all vertical, and I'm like, all right, every shot I see on YouTube, it's like that.
Yeah, I mean the Frogleap does a lot of that. When a lot of his videos have capo cams, and it's just I love the look.
Andy and Victor both had a couple of vertical shots, so that was interesting. I ended up using Victor's, but I couldn't lose that guitar shot.
Next video, everybody does it.
Mickey and then Greg real quick, and then we'll go to the next questions and try to get through them. Because we're gonna a reminder to everyone, we're gonna go over a little bit, but we're gonna break this out into like 3 or 4 hours. And what we'll do is we'll give each one sections into like an hour here, half hour, so you know when to come in for the things that you want to look at, or all of it for me. But we'll go a little bit faster. I'm gonna rush this a little bit, otherwise we'll be here all morning, and I'd rather do it when we planned and everyone knew that they were gonna sit there for 4 hours. Mickey and then Greg.
Yeah, just a question for Charles. Like, did you end up like having to do scene cut detect on a flattened file, or did you actually have each element?
Scene detect was useless.
because of all those things. Yeah, exactly. Just
I
fell
have to
apart.
go through and put the edit where I saw that Bill cut, even if it was one square, that had to be a cut. Right. So then I did a base node tree that one had a window for each of the participants. Right. So I had a base of 16. Right. And then I had all my balance grades on top and then some tweaks at the bottom. So each one of those clips, I don't know, I'll show you the node tree, but it's been interesting. But it was a learning experience. And I'm sure that in the future, we'll find a way that if we have more time, I would get all the clips from Bill.
Right.
And then he would just
I thought
receive
about
them.
sending him, but they were so
graded.
big. It just
Yeah,
didn't
that was the
make
other
sense.
thing. Size and transfers. And luckily, me and Bill have really good speed for upload and download, because if it wasn't for that, none of this would have happened.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg, real quick, and then.
Yeah, at the same time, I just wanted to point out that these guys are so entrenched in their craft that when faced with something that's just like totally out of the box, it automatically kicks in. You know, their tacit knowledge kicks in, and they have a place to start. You know, and they get an idea, and boom, it blows me away every time.
It's stunning. It was it's a great song, and it's even better. The more we dig into looking at like the effort that went into it, makes the song even better than it was when we just saw it without it's important that we didn't see it first. Like we just got to enjoy the song and not realize just the incredible effort. All right, next question.
Comes from Courtney from Hollywood in this. Did you exchange multi-track WAV files as the piece progressed, or just a mix down to play it to and then submit your own stereo part?
I think we talked about that with the click track. I mean, because it was all click track, right? Yeah. Next question.
Yeah, it was classic music video. Start with the track and just throw a video on top of it. Premiere.
Yeah, and not stereo. I got multi-tracks from everybody. So I had kick, snare, I had each element of, stereo guitar, Foley, 2 different mics, yeah.
Next question.
Prima Q of Motown says, please describe how the layout of the screen was achieved. Software, template, effects. So I tried to figure out where the players were going to be. I got their windows close to that. And then I realized that if I tried to make them precisely edited, precisely the right size through any of the cropping tools, it was going to drive me nuts. So I got them a little bit bigger than every window. And then I made a series of templates in OmniGraffle that was basically, if you looked at them, they're black with white squares where the video is going to knock out. Then I did a Luma key. And so I had to continually change the windows that were active for the Luma key. So I probably have 15 or 20 different templates that I laid over the scenes depending on how it was going to work, depending on how many windows I wanted to see. And that's basically the way. So there's a template on top, so I don't have to fiddle with getting those edges precisely right.
Right. Next question.
David Brady in New York says a friend teaches jazz at a local college and uses Jamulus. Would something like that have been a possibility with the remotes, or are you too remote?
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, we're just not there, as was talked about in yesterday's show. True collaboration like that is not possible through physics yet. We all wish it was. It isn't. This gets us in the ballpark, and so we're happy with that.
Next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois says, once COVID is over and things open up, do you think you'd consider a 3-day office hours conference in person, complete with the remotes and other artists doing performances?
Well, we'd like to perform live, without a doubt. That's been already talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez from Bellingham, Washington says, is the band open to a feature, maybe a cover on Tiger Beat?
We already got a picture of all of you in front of green screen, like lit in a certain way so that we can all put the big, everyone holding it, like that would be great.
No, but personally, I wouldn't mind one in AARP magazine.
No, but we are talking merch already, so t-shirts will be available.
All right, outstanding. Next question.
Chris Fenwick is in here. Does it upset musicians to see your track sliced up so much in the master project?
Good, Victor.
Yes, of course it accepts this, but we have to serve the music. And this is commonly done all the time in the real world. And that's the producer's role, that's the mixer's role. And I wish I was a perfect musician and could get everything in time every single time. I'm not. So then the producer and the mixer have to work on what feels good. So you don't want to lose the human feel by having everything be exact, but you do have to serve the music. And that was a concept that we used here in those times where, yes, there was some discord about, oh, I wish. That's part of the key learnings for us. Next time, we're going to go to a more traditional model of bass, drum type rhythm section first and not last. And it was a huge learning. And so, yes, there was some of that, but it's just part of being a musician when you're at this, trying to do something at this level.
I was just thinking from like Jeffrey's point of view, I was seeing a lot of slices on like, I think it was the crash cymbal. And I would just be thinking like, oh, come on, I nailed that. You know, come on, what are you doing? Why are you moving that?
Yeah, some of that went on. I'm sure Jeffrey would, if he was here, would say absolutely that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and let me add to Victor there.
Okay,
You
go
know,
Victor.
a lot of that is what band practice is for. A lot of what we did in post is what you would work out just jamming together. And so the feel of the song wasn't realized until everything was in the DAW and we started to feel the groove out. And that's why in this particular project, there were so many chops. So, you know, would one of those more low latency band internet tools work for that collaboration and realizing the groove of the song? Possibly, but then maybe go back to the more traditional way of tracking. I don't know, but a lot of that I think would be worked out in like a real true band practice when everyone's in the same room.
And, you know, the virtual part of this, I remember I had one clip I was using, and Andy was using the whammy bar, and he hit it like 5 times, and I had only 4 whammy sounds. And I went, wait a second, I'm off. I have to go find another day because this just isn't going to work. So as everybody changes and does, and then I finally found one, there's the one that's obviously perfect. So you can always go down to that minute level. You know, I think Jeffrey, who played drums on this, I mean, Jeffrey had so many good runs through the song. And sometimes exactly the best camera shot that I needed was not perfect in terms of what you were hearing. And I had to make a decision. Do I make it smaller so it doesn't get distracting? Or can I live without that cymbal crash? Or can maybe later I can lift it from somewhere and put it in there? You're thinking always like those kind of things.
You go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say, even as the person who wrote it and arranged it and wrote the parts, you know, like Greg said, he did a different bass line. Part of I had to sort of let that go, and I mean, he did it, and I went, "That's really cool." So you just, you know, it has to be collaborative, and everybody brings something to the party. You know, everybody brings their own taste, their own flavor, and it makes it better.
Yeah. No, next question.
Prima Q from Motown said, "What is your file naming convention?" Final, really final is the last one.
Go ahead, Greg.
It's pretty simple. It was pretty simple, basic stuff. You know, that NB, or is that the title of the song, underscore what it is, underscore version, underscore your initials, and underscore date. I mean, it's not, you know, it's folder hierarchy and just keeping track of everything. And with the version numbers and the dates, there was never any question about which was the latest thing.
And establishing that in the beginning was crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Prima Q back from Motown says, "What would it take for the band to perform live?"
Money.
A sponsor with a lot of money.
Yeah,
tour bus.
Next question.
And the last one in the queue is JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California, says, "What's your favorite time signature to jam in?"
Not 158.
Yeah, 5/4. Yeah.
Well, you go ahead, Brian.
Brubeck time.
Sorry, 5/4. Yeah.
5/4. Anyone else? Oh, hold on, I was just trying to. I lost my screen there for a second. Craig.
I like 7, 9, and 11. Mm-hmm. Because typically after you get out of the head and you start some solos, nobody's in the right place and it doesn't matter. So you just keep playing, and then eventually somebody's going to bring you back around to the head, and then you're good to go.
Go ahead, Jeff.
12/8.
Nice. Incredible work for everyone, and I think that we're going to see the fruits of this over this next year, because I think that when you do something so audacious and then you play it so hard. Okay, no, there's music coming in now. I can't. So anyway, when you do something so audacious and then you play hard, a lot of people do things audacious and then they give up, and they just put something out and that isn't, up to snuff or whatever. And I think that when you do something that's you shot really high and then you hit it rather than going, giving up somewhere. And I think that sets the pace. I think that it also is your calling card. Like if we want to attract other artists to play, if you want to get other people within office hours, if you want to get exterior bands or artists to come in, having that thing that doesn't make them have to have a leap of imagination of what you could do with them, that they can see it like, oh, it's not going to be a complete, mess. It's going to be something that looks great and they're proud of and everything else. And I think that between the music and the edit and the color and all the bits and pieces, just, really, again, I was just hoping that it would be in sync, and then you guys just crushed it, Victor.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who was involved in this project. They were all absolutely magical. Special thanks to a young man from here in South Dakota State University, William Reynolds, who's a trumpet player. He's a senior at the university, and I reached out to him because I play in a community band with him. So he lent his talent blind for free.
I was wondering who that was. I was like,
special thanks to him. And as a matter of fact, he got back to me and said, anytime you need me, do it. So again, and I'm going to plug that if you're a musician, if you've got some talents and want to be involved in the future, be ready to work hard, be ready to cooperate, but we welcome you. There's no entrance to barrier. There's no audition. And the one big thing is the next projects are going to have a producer for the song. Immediately, we're going to identify somebody who's going to lead some direction so that if there are some issues, those can be talked about offline as any producer would and say, hey, you're doing great, or here you're not quite cutting it. And so that was one of the key learnings. We can talk more about those when we do the Saturday session.
Yep. Grant and then Greg. Then we're going to close it up.
Hey, as an OG person who
the OG actually
the OG for Office Hours, but for singing as well, as in for doing some music on Office Hours. So we had 2 people the first time. So then is it like times by 6 or something each time? Yeah. So is it next time there should be like 24 people, or is it like 72 people?
No. The next project is going to be a little more tempered compared to this one. Okay. I assure you that.
But honestly, I stayed up till nearly 4 a.m. Because this was just amazing. Congratulations, everyone! Just epic.
And thanks to you and to you guys about getting the idea going too, because I think that's where we got the idea. You guys did the first one, and we got going. Hey, we should this could actually be something, because you guys did a really high quality one as well, and so the real seed of all of this, to take it there was from you guys, and so really. Again, it sparked. It was like this little seed, and now it's like, I would say, even no matter how impressive this is like a little sapling of what's possible, with what you guys are doing, because you're doing it so well. So I can't wait to turn it into a tree. Go ahead, Greg.
And I just wanted to say, on Victor's topic, you guys please help us. We want to create very deep benches. On our musicians here. We want everybody to play. We want to have a revolving situation where different people play all the time. So please don't be afraid to jump in.
Eventually we get it big enough. You could have one a week, but it's different bands. So every band is producing something, and they only have a due date of once a month or every other month. And Victor's like, not me.
I tell you, this was one instance where I'm really glad I raised my hand and said, I'll take on the project part of it. It's been a wonderful experience, and I've gained so many new, closer friends.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you. Incredible work, everyone. And tomorrow will be the long day. We've got a couple hours to sit around together, so we'll let you guys go. But March 6th, if these guys have time, that's only next week, a week after Saturday.
We're going to get together next Tuesday for a band meeting, and discuss doing it.
You guys need to all talk amongst yourselves, make sure that you can confirm that date. Let me know today, because I'm working on stuff over the weekend. I don't want to commit to it until you do. But otherwise we'll do a long day there. We'll do 3 or 4 hours and I want you guys to think about how you want to structure it. Remember, there's lots of Q&A. But break it up into groups and so on and so forth. So, all right. Thanks everybody. Just such a pleasure. Like every week there's always something that I just go, wow, we flipped some switch. And so I think, Frame.io for me last week and this one, and I just we're flipping. There's some kind of momentum, I think, that we're building up. So it's exciting. All right, everybody. See you later. I'll see you in the post show.